Okay, so this week on the podcast, we have Victor Rojas. Victor is currently the recruiting coordinator and assistant head coach at Ottawa University in Surprise, Arizona. We talk about what is NAIA baseball, how does it work, what are the roster sizes like. We get into Victor's previous experiences in baseball. He's had a very unique career in broadcasting and being a general manager in minor league baseball, and he's just a very interesting guy. So I think you'll enjoy this one if you're somebody who's interested in playing college baseball and don't really know who the NAIA level is for. And then this episode could be interesting for you as well, too, as if you just are interested in the game of baseball and like hearing different perspectives. And Victor's someone who has had a ton of experience, being that he's 57 years old now, and he's been in the game his entire life. He grew up in clubhouses. His dad was a longtime Major League Baseball player. So hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you do, make sure to hit the subscribe button below. Hope you enjoy today's episode with Victor Rojas. Now, welcome onto the podcast, Victor Rojas. Victor, thanks for coming on today.
It's my pleasure to be here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. So you've been, I was reading up on your bio on your guys' website, and now you're coaching college baseball, which I don't believe you've never coached college baseball before, have you?
No,
So
no,
this is your
not
first
until
time.
August. Yeah.
Yeah. So why now? Like, why are you wanting to get into college coaching now?
Well, it's kind of a long, convoluted, route that I took to it. But I've been in the game my entire life. I've done pretty much everything that I could possibly do besides coach at the collegiate level. And having a son that graduated high school in 23 and is playing in college, I kind of fell in love with the sport a little bit. That plus doing the ESPN baseball broadcast that I've been doing for the last couple of years, kind of opened my eyes a little bit to that side of things, and it really just kind of unfolded in a unique manner last summer. Really, right after I was done with the Super Regional, I had the A&M Oregon Super Regional. And when I was done with that, I started talking to a couple of head coaches. And my thought process, with my background in the front office and the like, was the game is going in a certain direction. The sport is going in a certain direction. How could I utilize my experience as a general manager and president of an organization of minor league baseball and maybe apply it to the Division I level? And so I had a couple of conversations with coaches. They weren't quite ready to, because there's so many unanswered questions still currently for fall of 25. They liked the idea. They just weren't quite ready to commit. And so it opened some doors and, it got me thinking a little bit. And it all started honestly with a post for Hastings College, an NAIA school in Nebraska, that I saw on a Friday afternoon. And I sent an email to the athletic director. Hey, if you're basically saying if you're willing to think outside the box, I'd like to talk to you about the opening. And I grew up in Kansas. I know the Nebraska area pretty well. And I like the Midwest. And he got back to me right away. And we had a conversation. And it kind of led to this going to Nebraska and the like. And 2 weeks go by, and they decide that they're going to hire a different person because he had had some previous experience there as a grad assist, which I totally understood. And I was thankful just for the opportunity. And I said, okay. And that was on a Friday. On a Monday, they called me, said, hey, he backed out. Would you like the job? I said, sure, I'll take the job. And by the following Friday, ESPN had made me an offer to come back. And I just didn't think it was fair as a head coach to do full-time ESPN stuff and really try to manage a schedule for a 75-man squad because they've got a developmental program. I just think it was fair, so I pulled out of that. And then the next morning, Tim Montez, whom I've known since 1988, texted me and saying, hey, I might be in need of an assistant coach. Are you interested in talking? And I said, listen, I can't text you what just happened in the last 7 days. Just call me. And that's how it all came to be. So And for a brief moment, from the time Hastings said they were going in a different direction on Friday, Dave Serrano at Johnson University said, "Hey, would you like to come and be the hitting coach?" I said, "Sure." So I was the Johnson hitting coach on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And by Monday, I was going to take the Hastings job. And then by Saturday, I was starting this process here in Arizona. So that's kind of how I got into it.
That's incredible. So are you still gonna continue to do broadcasting with ESPN this season?
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things I told Monty that I said, listen, I'm not backing out of the ESPN thing. I said, if you're willing to work around the schedule, I'd love to go through the process and talk to you and whoever else I need to talk to at OUAZ. And he said, absolutely, we'll work with it. And it's been great so far. Like I've got my first three games scheduled. Uh, Two are on a Sunday. We don't play on Sundays, and one is on a Thursday. My first game's coming up this coming Sunday, A&M and Alabama, I think it is, and I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, it's worked out really well so far.
What are some of the things that you've taken away so far since you started now coaching at the NAIA level? Like obviously you guys, your season's been going on for a little bit now. You guys have off to a good start, but what are some of the things that have jumped out at you that maybe you were surprised of having never coached at the NAIA or really watched a whole lot of maybe NAIA baseball?
Sure. Well, I was fortunate enough to have played in NAIA, so I kind of had an idea of what it was like. It's a lot different today than it was back in the late '80s, early '90s. Um, but I think the one thing that I take away from, and even as from a broadcast perspective, calling D1 games, I always wondered why there were so many conversations going on, timeouts, offensive and otherwise. And now that it's easy sitting up on a perch looking down at the field and wondering, but then when you're in the trenches, you realize that you do need to kind of reset some guys. You do need to pause and breathe, and let's talk about something else, clear the mind, the mechanism, because you can see it and you can hear it and feel it when you're in the dugout and near the on deck circle. And so I think that's the one thing that's really stood out to me. We're fortunate here at OUAZ to be blessed with some just quality guys. They're great dudes to be around. You're right. We're off to a good start. Hit a little bit of a rough patch of late, but I think adversity is always good for you, especially in the long run as we're starting our conference schedule this coming weekend. But overall, I think it's still the game. It's still the same game I grew up playing. I think it's taught differently. I'm fortunate enough, like I said, I have a 20-year-old son, so I get the lingo. I get the generational gap. I understand it, but I I'm at their level if that makes any sense. As a 57-year-old, I'm in tune with everything that's going on. Nothing's come to me as a surprise, but it's been a lot of fun. I feel reinvigorated. Not that I needed it, but it's like there's something about being able to share information, have it click, and then seeing the success on the field where you see the smile on their face or a fist pump back to you or a point, right to you. There's just something really special about that.
One of the reasons I thought you'd be a great guest to come on is obviously you're well spoken, have the broadcast thing, but also, I don't know if I've really talked to a ton of NAIA coaches and had them on my podcast, and I thought this would be a really good opportunity to help educate people on NAIA baseball because you hear Division One, obviously everybody knows about D2,
Right.
D3, JUCO's getting a lot of attention, especially with the way things are going, but you don't hear a lot about NAIA baseball. So what are some of the things that maybe separate NAIA baseball from those other levels?
Well, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think from a talent perspective, especially with the mid majors, D2, D3s, and I'm not degrading any program whatsoever. I think NAIA baseball is up there with some of these teams. I mean, I think we played Georgia Gwinnett in Georgia a couple of weeks ago. I think Georgia Gwinnett could step in and take on any D1 program right now. We didn't face Reinhardt. We were supposed to. Um, but we got canceled because of cold weather. So the talent across NAIA baseball is just as good as some D1 programs across the country. And I think a lot of it has to do with the opportunities. Look, NAIA schools are typically smaller schools. They're usually in rural parts of the country. We're unique in that we're in Surprise, Arizona. We're we're in a spring training town. We're just outskirts of Phoenix. So it makes us a little bit unique. But I think the opportunity to compete for a job right away is what really is it should be a motivating factor for a lot of kids either coming out of high school or from a transfer perspective. Things are going to shake out a little bit differently once this NCAA thing gets taken care of, whether it's 34 or 36, whatever the number is. There's going to be a waterfall effect, obviously, from the Division One level, and where do those kids land? If they keep and extend the injunction, the Pavia ruling, and allow the JUCO players to have those seasons not count, you're gonna get a lot of kids that go to the JUCO route just because of that, because they basically get 2 free gap years and not have it count against their NCAA eligibility clock. So again, there's a lot of things still up in the air. But I think from an NAIA perspective, I look at it this way, and this is what I tell the guys that I'm trying to recruit is I have opportunities to give. I've got scholarship money and I've got opportunities to give. And if you want to come in and compete for a job right away, legitimately compete for a job right away, I can guarantee you I've got opportunity to compete for a job. I don't think Division One schools can do that. Maybe some can, but if you're looking for an opportunity to come and compete, especially whether it's us in the GSAC conference, the last 2 national champions have come out of our conference. Hope International is good again. Arizona Christian's really good. The Masters received votes. So you have 4 teams in this conference. It's really, really good. And Ben Mesa's starting to turn things around. You got the Appalachian Conference, which has got Reinhardt, Tennessee Wesleyan, Cumberland. Johnson has last week beat Cumberland and took 2 or 3 from Tennessee Wesleyan. And then you got the Sun Conference. I mean, so you got really good baseball throughout the country and good opportunities to compete at the highest level. So I just think that's what, the one thing that probably differentiates us from, those D1, 2, 3s is the opportunity to just come in and compete right away, especially as a young player.
Are you envisioning that a lot of that maybe you get some of these high school kids who can come in and compete right away? Are you telling them like, hey, you come in and compete right away, you put up numbers and you'll have a chance to go somewhere else? Or like what's your thought process on this whole transfer portal thing now that you're a college coach?
Yeah, look, I'm honest. It's one thing. I'm too old to play games, first and foremost, right? Like I've been
Yeah.
down that road before, having gone through it with my son on the recruiting side. And so I'm as straightforward and as honest as possible. And as players, we all aspire to play at the highest level, whatever that be, may be. For me, it was professional baseball, and unfortunately, I was able to do it. For some, I want to go the D1 route. And granted, the landscape is a little sketchy right now, especially for high school players. What I tell players all the time is this: you come in, you compete for a job, you put up numbers. If someone comes calling for you, I don't think I'm certainly not going to hold you back. I don't think Tim Montez is going to hold you back because we want you as a player to ultimately fulfill whatever dreams you may have. Because at the end of the day, as players, we all know the day is there somewhere in the calendar that they're going to ask for the uniform off your back, where you're done playing. And do you want to have any regrets by not chasing whatever dream that is? Selfishly, would we want you here for 4 years? Absolutely. That's why we recruit you as a high school player. We want you here for the 4 years. But if you become a dude and all of a sudden you go off and Tony Vitale wants you at Tennessee, God bless you. I'm going to help pack your bags because that not only helps Tony and his program, it helps the young man fulfill his dreams. And selfishly, if you zoom the lens out from a marketing perspective, well, we just sent a player to Tennessee. And so that's how I look at it. And I think Monty feels the same way. Um, but not everybody's that way. Not all the coaches that way. Not all programs are built that way. I think we're unique in that regard. And I think it's because of, Coach Montez's leadership that we're willing to look at things like that.
Is it normal for at the NAIA level to have multiple teams, to have like a development team and then, the main team, or maybe a better way to put it is like, how do you guys go about it? Do you guys have multiple teams within your program, or is it just one team, certain amount of guys, and that's it?
No, we have multiple teams. We have a developmental program and we got the varsity. We are currently at 106 total players in our program. And so we've got a varsity team. We're carrying about 47-ish guys, give or take. We'll travel 30 to 32, depending on the situation. And then our developmental team is split up into two teams. You've got an older, more experienced team, guys that maybe are not getting the at-bats at the varsity level as far as games, get a chance to play there. And then we've got a younger team, the freshman, sophomore, that get a chance to kind of develop. And that's the whole plan, really. At the end of the day, for us, is out of necessity. We're 8 years into this program. Monty's 8 years into this program. I'm just in my first year, but the program is 8 years old, and out of necessity, it's had to be 70% transfers, 30% high school guys, because you want to be competitive as quickly as possible. Monty wants to flip that script. He wants it to be 30% transfer, 70% high school, because at the end of the day, it's like a minor league organization, right? The whole idea is to bring young players in so that you develop them and they filter up to the big leagues. That's what we would like to do, so that we get kids in from the high school level early on. We teach them how we play the game at our level, at our school, what the culture's like, establish that early on so that they just come right in seamlessly when they earn the spot to get to the varsity level. And if they do it as a freshman, God bless them. They do it as a sophomore, that's fine. Whenever it is, we want you to be ready. Now, there's always going to be churn, right? Because just out of, whether it's a financial situation or something at home, but that is kind of our role. I don't think every school has developmental programs, but there's a considerable amount that do. I know Hastings, where I was going to be at, or thought I was going to be at, their number's about 75. And so that they run a JV program as well. So it's starting to grow. I mean, look, club baseball is growing, at the Division I level. And I think this just gives the opportunity to get a scholarship. You get money to go play college baseball. And I think there are parents and there are kids that like the idea of, hey, no stress. I'm getting some money, considerable money, especially from our perspective, to kind of offset the cost of getting my education. And I think that's why we get so many kids that are willing to sign up.
How many scholarships are you able to give?
We're not capped on a number. So every kid, if I'm not mistaken, every kid on our 106, 105 that we have is on some form of athletic scholarship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Huh. So let's just say you're recruiting a high school kid and they're thinking about, coming to play for you out in Arizona. What are the chances that they're going to be able to be on that varsity team as a freshman? Like, do you have anybody right now who's playing varsity as a freshman, or is it just they're more likely to start out at one of those development teams and then work their way up?
Well, this year's team is unique in that it's a veteran team. It's a team that got to the regionals last year and lost. They won. They were 1-2 in the Georgia Gwinnett Regional last year, and it's the first time in program history that they'd gotten to the regional. And so we return a lot of guys. We got 28 seniors, and so the opportunities aren't quite there for younger players, and we didn't quite have a freshman that was ready to step in and compete for a job. We got one that's going to be a pretty good, switch hitter, second baseman. That next year he'll be able to make some noise. But going into next fall, yeah, I think there are some kids that we've recruited that I think they've got a chance if they come in and do what they're capable of doing, not get overwhelmed, and can transition to the college game. Um, why not? I think Monty looks at it from the standpoint of best man wins the job. We're not looking at the age. We're not looking at the classification as far as grade classification. I think it's look if you can handle it, from a physical standpoint, from a maturity standpoint, emotional, psychological, and you're the best guy. I think you'll go. I think you'll get the opportunity to do so. And it's unique. The one thing I do want to add too on the developmental side of things, and we've got a kid that's coming in from Southern California, and this was the appeal. And much like my son when he was in high school, young for his grade, not physically ready to play, especially in California, a good JUCO in California. not physically ready, um, and wanted an opportunity to come and play baseball here in Arizona. And the developmental program is a perfect fit for him because he knew he needed that. His dad knew he needed that. And so, the beauty of the developmental program for us is you're playing a fall schedule, you're practicing every day, you play a spring schedule. In Arizona, we're playing a developmental, championship, and it doesn't count against your eligibility. And that's the beauty of it. So you come here, you get a full year of true, earnest development, from fall through spring, and you're not burning a year of your eligibility. And I think that's what was attractive to this young man in Southern California. And so that when he is ready and he grows and Mother Nature finally kicks in for him, he's got his 4 years to do, what he wants to do wherever it is. Hopefully it's with us. Hopefully he sticks it out and he loves it, and we give him that opportunity, and we'll see. But I think that's also a unique part of those guys that aren't quite ready, and it happens, like literally happened to my son. They're kind of a 13th grader. They need the gap year to physically fill out because they're so young in high school. And so I think that's just one option that we provide.
Yeah, speaking of your son, like what are some of the things that you learned about the recruiting process having gone through it with your son?
Well, I will say that what I take away, or I have taken away, and I reiterate this with every conversation I have with a recruit is the following. I will be 100% transparent with you. If we're on this call, it's because I have a genuine interest in bringing you to OUAZ. I'm never going to say something and promise you something that I cannot deliver. And you will always know where you stand with me. And that's basically how I open up every conversation. And I think a lot of that has to do with, one, I'm a little bit older. Two, I've been down the road and dealt with a lot of different individuals at the college level, and have heard a lot of different things that I'm not overly fond of. And I don't think it's fair to kids to string them along. I don't, it's like an offer. I make you a verbal offer. Even if I give you a letter of intent, I don't put a deadline on it. I don't think it's fair to kids to stress over having to make a decision in a week's time or 2 weeks' time. What I do tell all of our recruits, potential recruits, is you take as long as you want, no problem whatsoever. Just know that we, as a program, continue to recruit. And so whenever it is that you're ready to decide if you want to come to us, circumstances may have changed, but you will know that. We will tell you that. And then we'll allow you to make the decision as you see fit. So that's the one thing that I just don't like playing games. I don't
Hmm.
like wasting time.
Hmm.
I don't I don't reach out to somebody and then say, yeah, I'll talk to you in a couple of months. Like if I want you, I make an offer. Like I don't wait around. Why? I just don't see the reason to do that. Because I'm not waiting for a bigger fish. I want that fish.
Hmm.
That's why I'm calling you. That's why I'm talking to you. That's why I'm making you the offer. And because I feel like you could be a terrific fit for our program, not just next year, but for the entirety of your college career. That's how we look at it, and I think it's been really good. As a matter of fact, this morning I was on a call with a young man who's looking to transfer. He's a redshirt freshman at a JUCO, and his dad was on the FaceTime with me because I walked him around. I gave him a FaceTime tour,
Nice.
and it was a long conversation. The dad was asking a lot of questions about the opportunity. He goes, I know he's got to earn a spot. I'm like, I wouldn't be wasting your time. I wouldn't be wasting my time being on this FaceTime call for 44 minutes if I wasn't interested in your son coming here and having an opportunity to compete. So I can guarantee you that he's got an opportunity to compete. And that's I think that's what maybe differentiates us from other programs at the NAIA level or even at the NCAA level. I'm not looking to compare what we do with other schools. We are who we are, and I think that's the one takeaway that most of the kids that we've signed so far, especially from the high school side, we're just now getting into the transfer side because JUCO guys want to wait, as long as
Yeah.
possible. Um, but and I get it, but I think that's the one thing that they really appreciate is the fact that we are who we are. We're not going to say one thing and do something else.
How would you describe your own personal coaching style? Like this is obviously your first year at, as you said, at Ottawa and Arizona. What are some of the things that someone might say about you if they watched you coach, or maybe one of your players might say about you, as a coach?
Um, well, I'd like to believe that they would say that I've got their interests, their best interest at heart. I want everyone to succeed. I told them this the other day, as a matter of fact. Nobody's here that wants to see you fail. To they want to see you succeed as much as possible. And a lot of that has to do with my love for the game. Having grown up, my dad played for so many years in the big leagues, and having grown up in a clubhouse, I just have a deep appreciation for how hard it is to get to the highest level. And I think the one thing that I'm fortunate to have experienced is not only the broadcasting side, because I kind of fell into that at 31 years of age, but being around front offices. Prior to I got into broadcasting, I was working in front offices, arena football, minor league baseball. I worked in the National Hockey League with the Florida Panthers, worked in the golf industry. And so I saw different leadership styles before I was, granted the opportunity to become a general manager in Newark and then broadcast at the same time and then run the Frisco Rough Riders for 2 years. And so I think I've taken that experience and just kind of crafted my own little thing. I'm forthright, I'm earnest, I'm straightforward. They know where they stand. I love to have fun. Um, they know that there's a time and a place for everything. Between the lines, it's business, and we're getting to work. Um, but I'm their biggest fan. I want them to succeed. I'm probably a little too much of a cheerleader, just because that's just me. That's the kid in me. But I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm on the back nine of life, I'm
Yeah.
trying to, this is, for me, it's about servitude, right? Like, um, there's the two mountains that you climb in life, right? The first one is always chasing status and ego and money and fame and all that stuff. And then the second one, when you're in between those two mountains, it's like, all right, what do I want to do next? And it's really about giving back. And I think that's the beauty of this opportunity. And that's when I went into it last summer, looking at these opportunities, that's what I wanted to do. It's like I haven't been, I was quasi-retired and I haven't been this jacked up to go to work in a long time. Like I love being on the field. I love being around the guys, love joking with them. But I also like teaching. And I think because I did get a chance to broadcast and I like to believe I know people, I can read people pretty well, and I'm a pretty decent communicator that regardless of the level, attention level, psychological level, mental level, I can speak at their level so that they understand it. And I think that's the one thing that really I think gets lost quite a bit in professional baseball is where you have these blanket philosophies that you're trying to impress upon your 160 players at the minor league level. And what you don't realize sometimes, at least front offices tend to forget, is that you've got 160 different personalities and individuals that you're trying to assess and you're trying to have understand whatever philosophy you may be. And it could be discussing TrackMan, it could be discussing whatever the case may be. And you have to understand, number one, what is their ability to absorb the information? Are their eyes rolling back? Or is it sinking in? Do they understand it? And then how you disseminate the information, And that's really, it's a back and forth, getting to know the individual, who they are, what their background is, what their understandings are. You can see in their face, being able to read whether or not they're understanding what you're saying. And I think that's it takes time. My background has provided me a lot of those experiences, so I think it makes it a little bit easier. Learning curve's a little bit shorter for me, but I've been fortunate that that's kind of how I present things to them, and I'd like to believe that that's what they would say about me. If they were asked about my coaching philosophy or how I went about my work.
Going back to you said, you sound like you were doing a lot of different things early on, whether it be in golf or hockey, arena football. At that time, were you hoping for a career in the front office of just
Yeah.
a sports team? You didn't matter which one.
Yeah, no, I see. So I left Lewis Clark State in 1990, and I signed with the Angels. And like my career was what it was. I thought a pretty good start, and just kind of fizzled out after '94. I was a player coach, got a spring training in '95, and then I was done. But I knew I wanted to be in sports. I didn't have a degree. I didn't finish my degree work, and I figured that the best way for me to learn on the fly was to gain as much experience as possible, as quickly as possible. Because I was 24, 25 at the time, and I wanted to get my real world experience going. And so that's kind of how it started for me. And it was really a matter of circumstances, networking early on that led, one job led to another. Arena football came about because a friend of mine was working the Thursday night fights at the Irvine Marriott in California. And he asked if I would run the music, ringside music between rounds, one one night a month, and I get paid $150 or something to that effect. And I said, sure. Well, the guy who I think it's still going on, the Thursday night fights, the Irvine Marriott, became the president of the Arena Football League franchise that came to Anaheim when the Rams left Southern California and went to St. Louis. So when he took over Arena Football, he hired Andy and I to become sales guys. Did that for a year. Well, it turns out that Roy sat on the board of directors of the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes. Hey, Victor, you're a baseball guy. They're looking for this. Are you interested? So that's how it all kind of started. And so it was literally one year to the next. And so I went from arena football to minor league baseball, moved back to South Florida, got hired by the Florida Panthers, did that for a year. They were building the new building where they currently call home. The management company of that building liked what I was doing in sales. So they said, would you like to work for the management of the building? I said, sure. Went over there. And that's kind of how I pieced my career early on. And then it was at 31. I was kind of at this, not midlife crisis, kind of like, I feel like I'm spinning my wheels a little bit. And I made sure that every step of the way, it wasn't a lateral move, that I was taking from a resume building perspective. I was taking a step up from a position perspective. And I was kind of just there. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you honestly who, what, when, where, but I got this wild hair that I wanted to try my hand at broadcasting baseball. And I just gotten remarried, and my wife was all for, hey, do what makes you happy. And so I called a lot of, the funny part is I called a lot of people that I played ball with, and some were managing teams or coaching teams in independent ball. I said, hey, I'm looking to, do you need me as a player? And then on my part-time downtime, I can go to the radio station, kind of figure this out. I learned very quickly, nobody wanted me as a player anymore. And I was fortunate enough to have a friend that was the third base coach in Newark for the Newark Bears. And Rick Cerrone, the former Yankee catcher, owned the team. And he got my resume. He said, I don't want you as a player, but I want you to come up be the assistant GM, put the team together. It was independent ball. You've got connections in the game, and then you can do the color on our broadcast, on our radio broadcast. So I moved up to Newark. My wife became the office manager. She was my signing bonus. And off we went. A month into being up there, our play-by-play guy quit. He went to work, I think, an indoor lacrosse league in New Jersey. And so I became the default play-by-play guy with zero experience. And then a month into the season, the GM was let go, and I became the GM. And so that's kind of how the front office broadcasting career started. And I had a really tough decision to make because I was doing both, and I liked both. The front office side GM, and then the signing players, dealing with agents. I kind of really enjoyed that, but I was loving the broadcasting side of things. And then I got connected with MLB.com. That first off season led to doing a show with Jonathan Mayo, and then I just stayed on the broadcasting route. And I did 18 years, and I was fortunate enough. But that's kind of how it all started. I'm telling you, people ask me all the time, "Hey, tell us a little bit about you're starting sports. I'm like, there's nothing little about it, and I could take up the whole hour. Seriously, it's because it's just it's unique. It's unique the way it played out. And the one thing I learned about myself along the way was I wasn't afraid to make a jump. I I never doubted myself. Was I scared? Yeah, there was plenty of times that I was scared. But did I ever doubt my ability to really succeed at each position? Not one time. Not one time. And I think the more it's just like anything else, right? The older you get, the more experience you become, the more comfortable you get in your own skin and the like. And that's just kind of how I approach it. And that's why this whole coaching thing came about. I look at my resume and I'm like, listen, I'm a baseball guy. I'm a baseball lifer. I know this game. I've been around it. I still learn, but I've been around this game long enough where I can teach it, and that's why I felt confident enough to go for a head coaching job, and then obviously this thing played out the way it did.
That's incredible. I would love to go back and hear your first year of play-by-play just to see
It's
what it's.
awful. No, no, you don't. No, you don't. It's just terrible. It's awful. Oh man, I'll never forget that first year. It was '01, and so that was the off season. So I'd signed. I knew Jack Armstrong and Jamie Navarro, both former big league pitchers. I knew both of them, so I signed them. So I had a couple big league guys, and then Ozzie Canseco was already on the team. Jose was, I think, in spring training with the Angels at the time, if I'm not mistaken. And he got released. Now, my brothers played with Jose in the minor leagues in the A's system. And because Ozzy was there, I remember getting a phone call from Jose. Hey, how would you like for me to come play with my twin brother in Newark? And so we ended up signing Jose, and then that opened up the floodgates. Jim Leyritz, Lance Johnson, so on and so forth. So we ended up with all these big leaguers. So fast forward to opening day, we open in Nashua, New Hampshire, and there's media everywhere. ESPN, everybody's there. And I got to go do the first broadcast. So I'm dealing with the stuff on the field, right? And I got to go figure out. Back then we had these little Comrex boxes that you landline, you just plug into a phone line and you dial up Seton Hall Radio. That's who we did our broadcast through. Well, I couldn't find I guess you needed a code to dial out. And so, I mean, I barely made it on air for game time with all these big leaguers on there. And it was just, I couldn't imagine. I think I threw away those tapes. They were so god awful that they just, well, first of all, it's just like anything else. Any broadcaster will tell you that you never like the sound of your own voice, right? To me, I'm always felt like I was a nasally dude on a microphone. But everybody, if you think about it, even if you listen closely to singers in a recording studio, they all have kind of a nasal tone to them. But that's just how we're all hypercritical of our own work.
Yeah, I was talking with somebody the other day, and I don't think people realize because I see people on Twitter all the time. They'll start complaining about play-by-play people calling a game in the playoffs or something. I just don't think people realize how hard of a job that is doing play-by-play. I know Chris Welsh here in Cincinnati, and
Yeah,
he does a really good job too. But it is a tough job, and I know you did the play-by-play for the Angels in the big leagues for a long time.
yeah.
And one of the questions that I had for you would be sometimes the play-by-play being TV, like you're able to do research behind the scenes, you're able to have conversations with people behind the scenes, and you're doing that, a lot, and you're doing it every day. What are some of the things that you learned from doing that, from having that position about just some of the best players in the world? Like, was there certain things that just stood out to you? Maybe an anecdote here or there, just anything that maybe shaped how you go about thinking about the game today or coaching in general.
Um, having grown up in a clubhouse, like I was never awed by, George Brett or Clint Hurdle when he got up to the big leagues and, all these guys that I was around and fortunate enough to be around. And so never looked at it as a big deal. Like, look, I never realized my dad was famous until my fifth grade teacher, Mrs. Sheets, started reading out of this book called Unsung Heroes. And one of the chapters is about my dad. And that's the first time it dawned on me, like, oh, like people know who my dad is. And so I never got into that whole thing. And so when I started the broadcast side, I, um, I was unique in that I didn't go to school to be a broadcaster. I had played, I had coached, um, and so my perspective was a little bit different. And the way I looked at the player's domain, the clubhouse, the dugout, was a lot different. I never went into a dugout or a clubhouse. I never, there was no reason. On the visiting side, I had to, and at home when I was on radio, when I first started, because I had to do a pregame radio interview. And I dreaded every minute of being in a clubhouse because the way I grew up, it's like that's the player's domain. If I need something, go in and get out. And that's how I always approached it. But when I got on the TV side and I wasn't worried about pregame interviews, I never went into the clubhouse. Um, I never saw the reason to. If I had a question, I could ask the guys when they came out for BP. But I think, being around, um, Josh Hamilton when he was in Texas, when the Reds traded him to Texas, and he made the big splash, watching him work, um, I've never heard the ball off a bat, that sound replicated. I'd never heard that. It was like a cannon being shot off. Um, so that I thought that was always fascinating, how easy he made things look. And then, when I got to um, the Angels, it was Torrey was there, and how smooth he made things look in the outfield, Torrey Hunter. And then Mike Trout gets up to the big leagues, and I'd never seen a man that size run as fast from home to first. Um, and so I was becoming mesmerized by, the skill level and how advanced it had become since last I had been on the field. And last I'd been on the field was, 95 in spring training. Even at the big league levels, when I was with the Marlins in 93, that's like, those guys, they're really good, but these guys are like at a different level. And I just thought that was fascinating. Then, Albert gets there, and then you've got this Hall of Fame player, sharing information with a future Hall of Fame player and Mike Trout, and their work ethic together was fascinating. Just the way that they would sit in the tunnel under the stadium and just one guy would put the ball on the tee for the other and then swing and they would talk. And it seemed like they'd spend an hour down there just doing that. And I just, the guys at the upper echelon, greats of the game. And it's like the little things that they're doing that nobody sees. And that's, that information is the stuff I try to impart on our players. Just when you think you got it figured out, the baseball's going to check to see if you've got a cup on. It's just the reality of it. And because it is a very humbling game, and no matter how good you're going to hit a soft spot at somewhere. And what are you doing to rectify that? And I think all those little experiences are things that I like to share with our players. And then when Shohei got there, he's just a freak. Um, he's I never realized how big he was, strong, how effortless, and that sound that I heard off Josh Hamilton's bat, it's the same sound that Shohei has.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's just different.
Yeah, it's almost like the guys you're coaching, you're like, hey, Shohei's and Josh Allen, like, don't worry about what their routines were. Like, let's focus on the players who, are a little more relatable.
Yeah,
Victor,
but that
appreciate,
being said, that being said,
yeah.
oops, my earbud just popped out. That being said, I can relate the information about Albert and Mike Trout.
Hmm.
These guys are
Hmm.
greats, Hall of Fame players,
Hmm.
right? And if the T work is not beneath them, then what makes you think you can, stroll past the T work that we're doing on Tuesdays and Thursdays or whatever the case may be? It's like if it's good enough for them and it's good enough for Chipper Jones, it's good enough for all these guys that have done it at the highest level, it should be good enough for you. Now, you're going to get out of something what you put into it. If you do something half-assed, that's how it's going to come about, right? That's what you're going to get out of it. But if you go full tilt like these guys do, good things are bound to happen. You just got to put in the work, and it's a constant evolution of figuring out I've got to put the work in. You can't just show up. You might get away with it one game, but it's over the long haul of a season. You'll get exposed.
When you say put the work in, are you specifically meaning like it's not just you have a routine or whatever, but it's like you're deliberately focused for every single rep within that
Yep.
routine. Like, is that what you're
Yep.
referring to?
100%. I'm all about process over the result. I mean, you know, I preach to the guys all the time. It's one pitch at a time. Like the only thing that I can control right now is this moment and this moment and this moment. And everything's working forward, not backwards, right? You can't worry about what just happened. You missed your pitch, big deal, flush it. Now you've got a different moment, different situation. How are you handling that? And that all starts with what you're doing from a prep work perspective. If you're not taking seriously in prep, then how would you expect your mind to be clear and focused when the adrenaline ratchets up? You know, I tell the guys all the time when we hit, I want you to hit at 80% in practice. The game's going to take you to 100%. So if you're practicing at 100%, now all of a sudden you're over amplified when the game time comes. And so really the psychological part of things, the mental part of the game is really that doesn't get enough attention because we're so worried about chasing numbers and exit velo or launch angle or spin rates or whatever the case may be. And they're all good. They're all great tools. But at the end of the day, it's like if you don't understand what it is that you're doing at the plate, on the mound, on the field, what good are the numbers? And I think that's the one thing that we try to really talk through with guys on a daily basis. You know, today we're going to incorporate a couple new things for infield work. And I'm sure there's going to be guys who go, why haven't we been doing this? And it's because we want to change things up because things aren't going the way we like right now. And so we need to change things up. And we'll see what, kind of effort they put in. Fortunate enough, like I said, we got great kids. They'll do whatever we ask of them. No complaints. And that's what's made it really fun. That coupled with, winning baseball is always fun.
Victor, I'm so happy that you mentioned the swinging at 80% and training not at max effort level. That's something that I try to emphasize to the hitters that I work with too. And sometimes I think I'm crazy because I don't hear other people talking about it. And you, with all your experience, having said that, I was like, okay, now I feel a little bit better about myself
Yeah.
saying
And
that.
again, it's like it's the ability to explain it to them.
Mhm.
Not just say, hey, we're going to swing at 80% today. I don't want you to swing at 100%. I want you to swing at 80%. That blanket statement, maybe one of the 27, position players that I have might grasp that. The others might say, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Not really understand it. So it's going further. 80%. This is why I want you to swing at 80%. And even when you watch their swings, ask the question, was that 80 or was that more like 60? I think it was 60. I said, well, okay, take it up to 80. And so now you've got a baseline to work from, right? And so again, it just becomes the conversation. And I think that's what gets lost oftentimes in our game. I can't speak to the other sports, but in our game, having a conversation and getting feedback is a lot more important than dealing with someone's mechanics. Mechanics are easy. Like you could fix mechanics. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do for mechanics. It's hard to fix this. If they're not right here, who cares what your mechanics are like? You're not ready to swing the bat in the box in the bottom of the ninth inning. Winning run is at second base, and you got 2 outs. You got a guy throwing razor blade sliders at you and hasn't been able to pitch inside. What's your mindset? What are you doing? What's your game plan? Those are the things that matter the most. And I think again, it becomes a conversation.
Victor, thanks so much for coming on today. It's awesome that you're in the college game, that you're coaching. We'll put the program's information in the show notes if everyone wants to just check it out or anything. But thanks so much. And again, I'm glad you're in the college game now, coaching, giving back. Anytime I can talk to somebody who's been in the game for a long time, ton of experience. I'm always down. I know you mentioned Clint Hurdle. I know Clint. I've had him on the podcast before too. He's awesome. And
Yeah.
there's so much experience and wisdom that you can learn from people who have just been around it a lot longer than you have. So I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. Anytime I can help out, I'm happy to do it.